Hello, students, teachers, parents, history nerds. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Nutshelled History, where we lay out the facts, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We start our American government series by looking at the beginnings of American government. Don't forget that there's a link for a fill-in-the-blank worksheet in the description. I just ask that you like, and subscribe. I apologize for any mispronunciations ahead of time. I do my best. All right, let's do this. Picture this. The colonists arrive in North America with 3 hot government tips from their old pals in England. Tip 1. Keep things organized. This is the ordered government plan, where rules exist to keep everyone from turning the place into a chaotic tavern brawl. Tip 2. Limited government, because no one wants a power-hungry leader running amok, right? Think of it as a diet government where power is kept in check. Tip 3. Representative government. Instead of one person making all the calls, you get to elect someone to do it for you. It's like sending a friend to fetch snacks, but for politics. Now, these ideas didn't just pop out of thin air. They're based on 3 legendary documents from the English political playbook. First up, the Magna Carta, 1215, which is basically the medieval version of telling the king, dude, chill. You don't get to do whatever you want. Next, the Petition of Right, 1628. Says no more using the military to crash at your house during peacetime, because nobody needs that kind of surprise guest. And finally, the English Bill of Rights, 1689, lays down the law: no peacetime armies, speedy trials, and free elections. Because who doesn't love democracy and fair trials? As for the colonies themselves, they became the ultimate government training camp. The king handed out charters like candy, granting authority to run things in 3 flavors. Royal colonies, where the king is basically your boss. Proprietary colonies, run by someone who got land from the king, think manager. And charter colonies, where the colonists themselves got a say. Most of these colonies had 2-house legislatures, except for Pennsylvania, which went for the minimalist one-house approach, probably to save on chairs. In the 1760s, Great Britain decided it was time to remind the colonists who's boss, slapping them with new taxes and laws. The colonists weren't exactly thrilled and started yelling, "Hey, no taxation without representation," which is basically colonial slang for, "We're not paying for your tea parties if we don't get a say in the guest list." The colonists didn't immediately band together like some superhero team, though. They started with baby steps. The New England states had already formed a confederation way back in the 1600s, just in case. Then in 1754, Benjamin Franklin rolled up with his Albany Plan of Union, suggesting a Congress of delegates to handle things like military defense and negotiations with Native Americans. But the colonies and the king both gave it a hard pass, no love for Ben's big ideas. By 1774, things had heated up, and 12 of the 13 colonies decided to have a Continental Congress, which is like a giant group chat for complaining about British policies. They sent King George III a strongly worded Dear George letter, aka the Declaration of Rights, telling him to cut it out with the taxes and trade regulations. They also decided that if things didn't change, they'd boycott British goods, because nothing says rebellion like refusing to buy tea. Then came 1775, and the colonists were done talking. Shots were fired, and boom, the American Revolution was on. The Second Continental Congress took charge and basically became the first government of the new United States. They also cranked out the Declaration of Independence, which was Thomas Jefferson's big moment. He borrowed from social contract theory, essentially saying, "We're breaking up because we've got rights to protect." After some debate, they all signed it on July 4th, 1776. Independence Day, baby! With freedom in hand, the newly formed states started writing their own constitutions. These all shared the idea of popular sovereignty, meaning that the government only gets to exist with the people's say-so. They also agreed on limited government, civil rights, liberties, and separating powers so no one would go full King George again. The 1780s were a rough time for the United States, where everyone wanted a government but nobody wanted to give it any real power. Enter the Articles of Confederation, ratified in 1781, which basically tied the states together in a very loose union. Think of it as a group project where everyone insists on working alone. The government was a one-branch wonder. Congress, with each state getting exactly one vote, like democracy on a budget. Congress could build an army, make peace, and settle state disputes, but there was a catch. It couldn't tax, regulate trade, or enforce laws. It was like trying to run a country with a please and thank you. Predictably, things went downhill fast. The states started bickering, taxing each other, and printing their own money like it was Monopoly night. Chaos reigned, and the economy tanked. The situation got so bad that Massachusetts saw a full-on farmers' revolt, known as Shays' Rebellion, which was basically the colonial version of flipping the table. Realizing that this DIY government approach wasn't cutting it, some leaders decided it was time to fix things. Delegates from Maryland and Virginia met up at George Washington's place at Mount Vernon to sort out their trade issues. That went well enough that they decided to have a bigger meeting in Annapolis, Maryland, but only 5 states bothered to show up. Not to be discouraged, they planned another meeting in Philadelphia, which would eventually become the famous Constitutional Convention, where they finally decided to build a government with some real muscles. In 1787, 55 delegates from 12 states showed up in Philadelphia with plans to fix the Articles of Confederation, but after about 5 minutes, they decided to scrap it and start fresh. These delegates, who later earned the cool title Framers, were like, why patch up an old house when you can just build a shiny new one? The Virginia delegation kicked things off with a plan for a government with 3 branches: executive, legislative, and judicial. They also wanted a bicameral legislature where big states got more reps based on their population, because size matters, right? But small states weren't having it and countered with the New Jersey plan, which called for a single-house legislature where everyone got equal say, no matter their size, like democracy on training wheels. In classic we-can-all-get-along fashion, the Constitution ended up being a patchwork of compromises. The Connecticut Compromise created 2 houses in Congress: the Senate, where every state got 2 seats, and the House, where the bigger states could show off their population stats. The 3/5 compromise added to the bizarre math by counting 3/5 of the slave population, which gave some states more representation. And let's not forget the Commerce and Slave Trade Compromise, which put Congress on a 20-year timeout from meddling with the slave trade. By September 17, 1787, the framers had hammered out enough compromises to wrap things up. But before the Constitution could become law, 9 out of 13 states had to give it a thumbs up. That sparked a huge debate, dividing folks into 2 camps: the Federalists, who were all in on the new Constitution, and the Anti-Federalists, who were like, hold up, where's the Bill of Rights? The Anti-Federalists were particularly annoyed that the Constitution didn't spell out basic liberties like freedom of speech and religion, kind of an important detail. And so, the battle for ratification began, with both sides throwing down arguments like it was the colonial version of a Twitter war. All right, to recap, the colonists brought over some key government ideas from England, keeping things organized, limiting government power, and electing representatives to do the heavy lifting. These ideas weren't just dreams. They were backed by documents like the Magna Carta and the English Bill of Rights, which were all about checking the king's power. The colonies then became mini experiments in government, with some run directly by the king, some by landowners, and others by the colonists themselves. Fast forward to the 1760s, when Britain started flexing with new taxes, causing the colonists to rebel with a no taxation without representation battle cry. After a few attempts at unity, including Franklin's rejected Albany Plan, they formed the Continental Congress and eventually declared independence. With their new freedom, the states wrote constitutions embracing popular sovereignty and limited government. But their first attempt at a national government under the Articles of Confederation was a mess, leading to economic chaos and revolts like Shays' Rebellion. Realizing they needed a stronger government, delegates met at the Constitutional Convention in 1787 and crafted the U.S. Constitution through compromises, though it faced opposition until the promise of a Bill of Rights smoothed the way for ratification. There you have it, folks. That is the beginnings of American government nutshelled. Thanks for stopping by Nutshelled History. Go ahead and begin tapping those like and subscribe buttons for me. See y'all next time on Nutshelled History.